Next on Newsmax Prime, the administration claims it's a done deal. Most Americans think it's a bad deal. It's the Iran deal, and Alan Dershowitz has the latest. Then you and I have heard illegals are here to do the jobs Americans just won't do. But if that's true, why are so many immigrants, both legal and illegal, on welfare? We'll take a look at the numbers and the impact. Plus, author Craig Shirley has some surprising news about Ronald Reagan. Stay with us for new revelations about our 40th president as Newsmax Prime starts right now. Good evening and welcome to Newsmax Prime. I'm J.D. Hayworth of Prime Interest Tonight. Moving forward, the Obama administration claims a victory, saying it has enough Democrat support to overcome any Republican challenge on the nuclear agreement with Iran and other world powers. Newsmax TV's John Bachman takes a look at the numbers. John?
Well, J.D., that 34th vote backing the Iran deal means the most opponents can get is 66. Of course, they need 67 to override a presidential veto. So for the purposes of this discussion, let's use the Major League Baseball playoff race as a metaphor here. 34 was a number needed in the win column to clinch a spot in the wild card playoffs. But the White House may now push Senate Democrats to avoid the need for the president to break out his veto pen. For Obama, that would be like winning the division outright. Minority Leader Harry Reid only needs 41 votes for a filibuster. Right now, John Kerry and Joe Biden are working hard to wrap up the 10 Democrats still undecided. 34 plus 7 equals 41. So we can think of 7 as the magic number the administration needs to clinch the pennant and prevent a vote on the disapproval resolution. Mitch McConnell and opponents need 60 votes in the win column to do this. Only 2 Democrats, Senators Bob Menendez and Chuck Schumer, have defected. That leaves McConnell and opponents with just 56 votes, 4 games back. 4 votes shy of preventing a filibuster, and again, 13 votes short of killing the deal altogether. On Tuesday, Congress will begin debate, possibly, on this disapproval resolution, but because of all the procedural wrangling in the Senate, it will likely die there, and a lot of folks are looking at Bob Menendez, chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, as the guy to blame for not making this pass as a treaty, as opposed to the way it's handled now. J.D., back to you.
John, if only it were fun and games. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined now by Harvard Law professor Alan Dershowitz. Alan, the author of the book, The Case Against the Iran Deal. And, of course, Alan is a blogger for us here at Newsmax as well. He joins us from Newsmax, New York tonight. Alan, you heard the numbers and the baseball metaphor. It's not fun and games. It's really serious, but I have some more numbers. The $50 to $55 billion Iran will receive in sanctions relief. John Kerry was asked about that. Here's what the Secretary of State had to say.
Yes, it is probably fair to say something may find its way to some bad or nefarious activity. But the activities that we have objected to that Iran is engaged in are not fueled primarily by money.
Well, if that response was intended to make people feel better about this agreement, I can't imagine that it helped. Your take on how things have turned out thus far, Alan?
Well, first of all, John Kerry, who's a friend of mine, the idea that money doesn't fuel terrorism is, of course, absurd. Hezbollah has given enormous amounts of long-range rockets. They were given IEDs. They were given weapons that killed Americans. They blew up the Marine barracks. They killed so many Americans in Iraq, and that's all fueled by money. So, of course, as the president acknowledged, this money will be used, at least some of it, to fuel terrorism, kill Americans, kill American allies. The numbers hide the fact that this is all very undemocratic. A majority of Americans oppose this deal. A majority of senators oppose this deal. A majority of congressmen oppose this deal. Congress and the Senate were elected more recently than the president. They have the current mandate. They're opposed to the deal. Yes, the president was able to get a minority of the Senate not to oppose the deal. By the way, many of the senators who are voting with the president hate this deal. They think it's a terrible deal, but they think that it'd be worse not to vote for it and to undercut the president's authority. So the president has not won the intellectual battle for the minds and hearts of Americans or American congressmen and senators. He's won a narrow procedural victory. He may throw it all away if he makes the foolish blunder of seeking a filibuster. Can you imagine the most important foreign relations deal of the 21st century being filibustered into existence using the Southern tactic that denied African Americans liberty, that denied democracy to so many people? I know Harry Reid. He's a smart guy. I can't imagine that he will allow himself to be bullied by the White House into denying the Senate the right to even vote on this important deal by filibustering. That would be shameful, and the American people will not accept a filibuster of this deal.
Alan, you speak of the troubling tactics that may develop in the United States Senate, but internationally, I don't know if we classify this as damage control in terms of foreign policy, but Secretary Kerry has now promised money and military aid to Israel and Saudi Arabia. In the wake of this deal, he pledged as much in a letter to Congress. Will that do any good? Will that protect Israel?
No, because the administration has refused to agree to give Israel bunker-busting bombs. That is the only military technology that Israel could use if they had to choose between a nuclear-armed Iran dedicated to Israel's destruction, or taking a very risky path to trying to eliminate their nuclear weapon. The only way they could do it would be through bunker-busting bombs, and the United States has so far refused to give Israel bunker-busting bombs. So what they're promising them is small change, and what they're trying to do with the Saudis is keep them in their camp. The Saudis are edging closer to Iran now because the Saudis and most Middle East countries, they admire power. And the end result of this deal is that Iran has gotten more power, more money, more influence, and America has lost its power and lost its influence, and power attracts many Middle East countries. So we're losing our alliances in the Middle East. We're trying desperately to keep them, but I don't think it will be successful because power is what Iran now has, and we've shown a lack of power.
From this disturbing story internationally, we turn to another story that has raised some eyebrows back here at home politically, and there's a legal angle to it as well. One of Hillary Clinton's aides, Brian Pagliano, says he'll claim the fifth when he testifies in front of the Benghazi committee. Why would he resort to using the Fifth Amendment, which is obviously constitutional? We all have the right to it. But what does that mean to Mrs. Clinton, both politically and legally?
Well, Hillary Clinton's campaign has said they wished he would testify. They don't want him to take the fifth. They want him to testify fully and completely. So I don't think you can infer anything negative about Hillary Rodham Clinton. There's an easy way around it. They give him immunity. Let them give him immunity. Then they're not after him. They're after Hillary Clinton. If they give him immunity, he can't claim the fifth. He has to testify. So that's what they ought to do. And this is just a tactic designed to get him immunity from prosecution, or at least immunity from using the evidence that he would provide against him in a possible criminal prosecution. But there's an easy way around it. Just give him use immunity, make him testify, and he'll have to testify.
Let's turn to yet another story with legal overtones, and it comes from the Commonwealth of Kentucky. A county clerk there refusing to issue marriage licenses for same-sex couples. Now a judge has sent her to prison. Your take on that, both constitutionally and were you her attorney, how would you advise her? 30 seconds, please.
Well, first of all, this is not about religion. If it were about a religion, then the clerks would refuse to marry people who had once been divorced. Jesus was very clear about that one. Not so clear about gay marriage. This is all about bigotry. Anybody who wouldn't marry a gay couple but would marry somebody who's been divorced is not exercising a religious right. They're showing bigotry against gays, and the law doesn't have to tolerate that. She doesn't have to marry gays, but she doesn't have to have a job marrying people. If she wants that job, she has to follow the law.
And right now, I guess she stays in prison as long as she refuses to do that. She could be there a long time, could she not?
She could. And, you know, if that's her religious belief, then she ought to stay in prison. That's what Martin Luther King did. That's what many other people did. But I don't believe this is about religion. I think it's about bigotry. Because if it were about religion, she would refuse to marry people who had been divorced.
Alan Dershowitz, author of the book, The Case Against the Iran Deal. Thank Alan for his comments. And Newsmax Prime will continue right after this.